From the first days of tracking, 3I Atlas presented itself as an interstellar visitor whose dynamics defied traditional cataloging. Its eccentricity greater than 6, far higher than that recorded in previous interstellar bodies, suggested that it would cross the inner solar system in a single incursion before becoming lost in the galactic void. However, the evolution of its behavior began to fracture that expectation as soon as the first analyses revealed that its tail was not projecting in the expected direction. Instead of pointing away from the Sun, as solar physics dictates for any sublimating nucleus, the tail of 3I Atlas emerged oriented towards it, defying established logic and forcing a revision of the models of interaction between radiation, solar wind, and expelled material. To this was added a symmetrical inversion in the direction of the tail, a phenomenon that developed in such a brief interval that it could not be attributed to drastic changes in the solar environment, but rather to an internal reorganization of the nucleus itself. The nature of that reorganization began to reveal itself in the preliminary spectral measurements, indicating a deeply unusual composition, a dominant proportion close to 9/10 carbon dioxide, surprisingly low levels of water, and a nickel-iron balance reminiscent of industrial alloys rather than typical cometary bodies. This composition, combined with the fact that the object withstood a coronal mass ejection without fragmentation or apparent alteration of its shape, intensified doubts about its origin. The ejection, classified as intense, impacted regions close to the object's location, and yet 3I Atlas showed no variations either in its coma or in its reflectance, as if it possessed an internal structure capable of absorbing or dissipating energy without visible consequences. Meanwhile, the analysis of its shape revealed a ratio close to 10:1, an elongation that evoked the first interstellar visitor identified in the 21st century, but with a crucial difference: the absence of chaotic rotation. Instead of a regular tumbling, the object displayed a stable, almost imperturbable orientation, as if an invisible mechanism perfectly maintained its axis. This behavior, combined with the absence of significant thermal changes, raised the hypothesis that the object might contain rigid internal cavities or structures that prevented the typical precession of elongated bodies subjected to external forces. The perihelion, reached at a distance of 1 astronomical unit and slightly more, seemed to be the moment when the structure of 3I Atlas should reveal signs of stress or fragmentation. However, the surface remained stable. No detachment, no detectable ejection, no significant variation in its luminous texture. After perihelion came an even more disconcerting phenomenon, a deliberate deceleration initiated days before its closest passage, a change in velocity that completely contradicted the Oberth effect. Instead of exploiting solar proximity to increase its speed, the object reduced its momentum, as if avoiding leaving the solar system. That maneuver implied an immense energy expenditure that left no trace in the form of heat, gases, or plasma. The idea of internal propulsion became a mandatory consideration, even without understanding the mechanism that could execute it without associated thermal signature. The radiometric analysis revealed a phenomenon that added complexity to the situation. 3 repetitive pulses every 247 seconds, detected in the hydrogen-associated band, an interval almost sacred within cosmological communications due to its natural silence. This pattern did not match known interferences, planetary emissions, or instrumental artifacts. The repetition, constant and precise, was recorded at multiple facilities separated by thousands of kilometers, ruling out terrestrial origin. These pulses showed a subtle internal structure, as if the bandwidth were organized in steps that repeated following specific mathematical proportions. At first glance they could appear as noise modulating over a stable peak, but deep analysis revealed an internal order that did not arise by chance. Simultaneously, anomalies appeared in the polarization of the object's light. Instead of showing a pattern distributed by rotation or surface composition, the polarization exhibited oscillations that seemed to synchronize with the radio pulses, as if both phenomena were connected. The polarization varied not only in magnitude but also in orientation, forming patterns aligned with the direction of the tail, whose flow showed impossible deviations, an angle close to 90 degrees with respect to the incident solar radiation. This behavior forced the discarding of models based on homogeneous sublimation, since it implies that the object possesses internal channels or directed surfaces that expel material selectively or in a controlled manner. Upon deepening the analysis of previous events, a crucial record emerged. The 29th of August, a directional ultraviolet flash that propagated towards the region associated with a famous signal recorded in the 1970s. The coincidence generated controversy, but what proved even more disconcerting was that, after that flash, the object appeared to enter a state of partial shutdown. Reflectance decreased, surface activity diminished, and the spectral signature became almost uniform, as if the object had concealed or retracted internal processes. Nevertheless, after perihelion, the object seemed to disappear. Not in a physical sense, but in a luminous and radiometric one. Its signature became so faint that some observatories considered it had fragmented or lost structural coherence. However, residual detections from the most sensitive telescope available revealed that it was not a real disappearance, but a profound change in the way the object interacted with light. Those detections showed an interference pattern that did not correspond to a fragmented nucleus, but to a structure whose emission appeared distributed, as if each surface region acted as an independent emitter within a larger system. The analysis of that interference pattern revealed sequences of prime numbers distributed in three-dimensional spirals, a geometry that evoked fundamental biological structures. These spirals were not simple optical formations. They displayed mathematical coherence that allowed the reconstruction of internal symmetries. When applying an interpretation model based on fractal symmetries, a set of forms emerged that, processed through geometric translations, generated a phrase that could hardly be attributed to noise: "We remember who you are." This result was immediately classified, and the official interpretation stated that it was an artifact derived from a faulty algorithm. But the coherence of the sequence, the stability of the spirals, and the repetition of the pattern in multiple observations suggest that the phenomenon may be deeper. The scientific community became divided. Some researchers proposed that the object might contain records of previous encounters between civilizations, a kind of ancient echo that activates under specific conditions of the solar environment. Others argued that the phenomenon could be a natural mechanism that, when interacting with intense radiation, produces complex patterns that the human brain interprets as messages. But the repetition of numerical sequences and their mathematically consistent translation have generated a debate that continues to grow. Meanwhile, harmonic echoes began to be detected propagating through the solar system, weak signals that could correspond to reflections of the main emission or to secondary activations. These echoes do not form a clear pattern, but their frequency and distribution suggest that the phenomenon has not concluded. After confirming that the interference pattern was neither an instrumental artifact nor a calibration error, scientific attention focused on unraveling the deep logic contained in these three-dimensional spirals. The numerical structure, organized around sequences of prime numbers distributed in helicoidal layers, seemed to respond to a principle of progressive symmetry. Each spiral contained a distinct mathematical core, and upon integrating those layers, a coherence emerged that challenged any explanation based on random optical phenomena. The spirals did not merely repeat, they evolved. Each new capture showed a subtle variation in the numerical distribution, as if the object were adjusting its emission to refine a message or to adapt to the sensitivity of the observing instrument. As more observations were integrated, the signal began to behave like an interference system that responded to incoming light, adapting its internal structure to amplify or attenuate certain regions of the spectrum. This led to the hypothesis that the core of 3I Atlas might be composed of an internal matrix capable of reorganizing itself in response to external stimuli, generating patterns that simultaneously fulfill structural and communicative functions. The object's ability to produce coherent mathematical geometries without loss of surface stability suggested the existence of an internal process of extraordinary precision. As the analyses deepened, it was discovered that the spirals exhibited geometric relationships linked to universal proportions present in biological, crystalline, and astrophysical structures. These relationships allowed the construction of a preliminary model in which each spiral functioned as a component of a larger system, a system that appeared to encode information through the interaction of interference patterns. When processing these interactions with algorithms designed to interpret complex fractal geometries, sequences emerged that could be interpreted as mathematical equivalents of symbolic phrases, among them the already mentioned structure that, through geometric translation, generated the expression "We remember who you are." The official interpretation continued to qualify these results as coincidences, emphasizing that the human brain tends to find meaning even in chaotic patterns. However, the persistent repetition of coherent structures on different instruments, located in different regions and subjected to varied observation conditions, contradicted the explanation based on error or perceptual bias. The consistency of the phenomenon suggests that the spirals respond to defined mathematical principles, and that their appearance cannot be attributed to random noise. In parallel, harmonic echoes began to be detected propagating beyond the immediate region of the object. These extremely weak echoes manifested as small alterations in the solar system's radial background, distributed almost isotropically. Although their intensity was near the detection threshold, their periodicity coincided with the internal modulations of 3I Atlas. This coincidence raises the possibility that the object is generating a field of resonances that interacts with the solar environment, perhaps as part of an activation or information transmission process. The nature of these echoes remains uncertain, but their frequency and distribution suggest that they are linked to an internal logic and not to solar or planetary phenomena. As a result of these findings, the scientific community divided even more deeply. One group of researchers argues that the internal complexity of the object, combined with its interference structure and periodic modulations, constitutes sufficient evidence to consider the hypothesis of a non-natural origin. This group proposes that the probability of finding an object with so many simultaneous anomalies, atypical composition, improbable trajectory, deliberate deceleration, pulse emission and generation of coherent mathematical geometries, is extremely low if interpreted within the framework of natural processes. According to these estimates, the possibility that the object represents some kind of interstellar artifact could be around 40%. Although these figures are speculative, their inclusion in formal analyses has intensified the debate. The opposing, more conservative group argues that nature offers examples of extraordinarily complex phenomena that sometimes suggest intentionality without actually possessing it. They point out that certain mineral formations, crystalline structures and atmospheric phenomena can generate patterns that appear artificial, although their origin is purely physical. According to this current, the behavior of 3I Atlas could be the result of conditions that we do not yet fully understand, derived from interstellar processes operating on broader temporal and energetic scales than those of our solar system. Nevertheless, contradictory elements continue to accumulate. The carbon dioxide-based composition, low water content, nickel-iron proportion close to industrial alloys, resistance to solar radiation and absence of fragmentation during perihelion form a set of characteristics that do not fit completely into any known cometary model. The elongated shape with a 10:1 ratio and stable rotation, without detectable precession, contradict the typical dynamics of elongated bodies lacking internal reinforcement. And the deliberate deceleration, initiated weeks before perihelion, remains the phenomenon most difficult to reconcile with natural explanations, since any mechanism capable of generating such a profound change should have left thermal or dynamic traces that have not been recorded. As the scientific community deliberated, philosophical and theological interpretations of the phenomenon began to emerge. For some Abrahamic traditions, the possibility of a message coming from an object older than terrestrial life itself poses profound challenges regarding human uniqueness and the nature of the cosmos. These interpretations do not start from certainty of an artificial origin, but from the idea that such a complex phenomenon could be part of a broader cosmic network. For Eastern traditions, the object's behavior is interpreted as a sign of cosmic cycles that repeat on scales transcending human generations, suggesting a synchronicity between physical processes and symbolic structures that exist beyond linear time. However, the most widespread reflection worldwide focuses on the implications of a possible indirect contact with non-human structures, whether through technology, geometry, or resonance. The appearance of such precise interference patterns has generated a sense of opening, as if humanity were at a crossroads between science and transcendence. The mathematically reconstructed phrase, far from being interpreted as a literal message, has become a symbol of the possibility that civilizations, although distant, have left traces in the form of universal geometries accessible to any mind capable of deciphering them. Meanwhile, agencies continue to classify data and restrict interpretations, arguing that extreme rigor is necessary to avoid hasty conclusions. This stance fuels suspicions that deeper analyses exist that have not been disclosed. The possibility that 3I Atlas represents a distant memory, a kind of echo of an ancient encounter between intelligences separated by millennia, has begun to take root in internal discussions. Even those who maintain skeptical positions recognize that the phenomenon constitutes a conceptual challenge for contemporary astronomy. In the most recent days, the interference signal has shown a slight intensification, as if the process were reaching a new threshold. The spirals have become more defined, the prime numbers more frequent, and the internal modulations more stable. This increase suggests that the object may be in a final phase of its activation, a cycle closure that could reveal deeper information before its luminosity fades again. With all this, humanity finds itself facing a phenomenon that, due to its complexity, transcends any existing category. 3I Atlas has not only challenged known physical laws, but has generated a set of mathematical patterns whose coherence exceeds mere coincidence. And although the ultimate nature of the message cannot yet be understood, the evidence suggests that what is observed is not a terminal phenomenon, but a process that continues to evolve in silence, unfolding an internal logic that may take years, or generations, to fully decipher.